Welcome back to the Discovering Commercial Real Estate podcast. We're pleased to have Alex Leykind, founder and managing director of Equitus Capital Group, here with us today. Alex is a banking and capital markets industry veteran with extensive tenure representing middle market developers, large multifamily property owners, and real estate investors. Alex, thank you so much for coming on. It's
Thank you for having us. It's a pleasure.
Before we talk business, give the audience a little sense of your background. So where are you from and why did you get into commercial real estate?
So I was actually raised in New York, spent my whole, adulthood in New York, and have been in commercial real estate going on 18 years now.
Great. And what was your major in college?
College was a long time ago, but the major was biology and political science.
Right. And why did you decide to go from biology, which I'm assuming is pre-med,
Absolutely.
into commercial real estate?
I like to think that, real estate in general is, it's not a job, it's a calling.
Right.
And, it came calling and fell in love with it. And
Awesome.
I've been doing it ever since.
That's amazing. And if you had to think back to your earliest sales experience, the first time you remember selling something, what comes to mind?
I think the first sales experience would be, closing my first loan. Just coming out of college, I was like 21, 22 years old, and, was able to get my first client to put me through the ringer.
Right.
Probably the toughest deal I ever did in my life. And, when you're just starting out and you get your first one done,
Right.
it's, felt like you're standing on top of Mount Everest.
100%. And why did you decide to go down the banking route of the industry? How do your interests and your skill sets align with your position today?
Why banking? So, always was really good with numbers, fairly good analytical skills. And, in finance and commercial lending and lending of all types, it really boils down to understanding data, understanding numbers, and, being able to adjust numbers and, make sure that, things are within fluctuations. And that's what I've always been good at. So it was kind of an easy transition.
Amazing. Great. And as far as Equitus Capital Group, can you give us a little rundown of what the company does and what the company is and what's the competitive edge with Equitus?
Sure. So Equitus Capital is a commercial financing advisory firm. I started Equitus in January of 2020, so perfect timing. We specialize in all types of commercial real estate lending across all commercial asset types all over the country. So senior debt, mezzanine, preferred equity, equity raises, and all different types of commercial capital financing.
Great. And can you give us a breakdown of the major, most common loan types that you service and what kind of deals that these loan types are best suited for?
So, we cover a pretty full and broad spectrum of commercial loans. I would say we do a very substantial amount of commercial lending with respect to construction, rehab. We do a lot of owner-occupied acquisitions and refinances. So we do a lot of SBA business and, bridge loans, investment loans on multifamily, commercial, industrial, nonprofits, all the major food groups.
Great. And what's your favorite loan type or submarket or asset class to work with?
I like construction.
Great.
I like construction a lot.
Exciting.
Spent pretty much my whole career in one capacity or another working on construction financing.
Great.
I think it's a very big niche in the market, and you get to, change hats for a minute and look at projects and look at properties as they develop from, a hole in the ground to a 30-story building sitting in front of you.
Amazing, 100%. And let's say from the perspective of a brand new developer, how do they navigate the financing landscape if they lack the capital?
So for newer developers, raising equity, of course, is a very, very important thing.
Right.
What I personally think is, vital to developers, even more than money or, finances off the bat, is experience. I highly, highly recommend, either to partner with a developer or bring on a very seasoned, experienced builder that will be able to kind of offset some of your shortfalls. And as long as, the respective lenders are comfortable with, with their experience, then you could kind of, learn off of them.
100%, definitely. And so Banks finance based on the total cost of a project.
Absolutely.
Walk us through what goes into the calculation of this cost. What are the major components of this cost?
Absolutely. So I like to think there's 6 major pillars of the capital
Okay.
stack when it comes to commercial construction lending.
Mm-hmm.
So the property, soft costs,
Right.
hard costs. Every hard cost, budget must include a minimum of a 10% hard cost contingency, interest reserve, and closing costs.
Right.
Those are the 6 major pillars. And then based on that, any respective lender based on, project type, project location, and an extremely, extremely important covenant of who the sponsor is and their experience,
Right.
You'll be able to leverage anywhere between 55 and 75, sometimes 80% of
Right.
cost.
And do you think it's realistic for a brand new developer to be able to navigate this landscape, this financial landscape, without the use of a broker?
I think that, especially in construction
Right.
or rehab, I think because it's such a risky asset for the lenders, I think that, unless someone wants to really get burned,
Right.
I think the first few should definitely be through a broker.
100%. So you think starting out, you really should utilize somebody like yourself who has a lot of experience navigating this kind of lending landscape to walk you through what to do and what not to do.
1,000%, because it's, when it comes to construction lending,
Right.
it's also not just about, how much leverage you're going to get. It's what it's like to work with the lender for the next year to 2,
Yep.
because it's going to be a marriage for a little while.
Yeah.
So, how quickly do they turn requisitions? How easy is it to fund contingency from them?
Right.
How easy is the process on the back end when you're actually there every day in and out to get your project funded?
100%. And how does a borrower's track record play into the percentage that the bank will give you of this cost? And what can new developers without experience and without a track record do to show the bank that they're trustworthy?
So when it comes to experience, that famous line, the bigger the better.
Right.
The more experience, the longer track record. Banks love to see that because, banks or private lenders, for that instance, who lend on these types of assets ultimately do want to know that,
You've done it before.
you're not the first one out and you're not there first. Construction is a very hard, asset type.
Right.
There's a lot of intricacies that go into it. Depending where you're building, New York City is an extremely tough place to build. So banks want to know, because of the risky asset that they're putting on their books, they want to know that you've done this 10 times, 20 times, 100 times. The more, the better.
100%.
And when it comes to newer sponsors, it ultimately boils down to, you could potentially compensate with stronger financial backing, right? Go heavier cash into it the first few deals. Bring on a very seasoned team, architects, engineers, builders, people that will be able to kind of support you as you're kind of going through the trials and tribulations of your first deal.
100%. And somebody who doesn't have this financial backing, do you think it's important for them to partner with someone who does have that experience and kind of split the profit and split and learn from that person?
Absolutely. I'm actually a very big proponent of it. And then we tell, newer developers all the time that, the first couple of projects, it really makes sense to get them under your belt, partner with someone who has the experience, let them kind of show you the way. Because it's not about the one, right? It's about doing many, many, many.
Exactly.
And if you kind of get the first few under your belt and you learn the right way, then you should be off to the stars.
100%. And I watched some of your interviews where you said that debt, even expensive debt, is cheaper than equity. Why is this just the general rule of thumb? And in what situations is the opposite true?
So I still feel that way. I think that's the case. Whether, if I'm willing to, as a newer developer, let's use that as an example, right? If I'm willing to, take more expensive debt, if I could get it, that is, right? As opposed to taking on a partner, even expensive debt, you pay the bank, you pay the lender, and they're out of your life forever.
Right.
But partners, you got to live with. So that's why I think debt is absolutely definitely cheaper than, equity.
100%.
However, with that being said, one of the few times I would consider that as an exception is like your previous question, right? So if I'm starting out and I really want to really understand and learn the ropes, I think in that instance, it's more valuable in the greater scheme of things than any individual project per se.
So as you get more and more experience, debt becomes more and more of a tool to really unlock the full potential of your project.
Absolutely.
Great.
Absolutely.
And how can hard money loans or private money be seen as an execution facility? How can private money speed up the funding process and help a real estate entrepreneur?
So, in all of commercial lending, right, it's a risk reward scenario,
Right.
right, in every component of it. So, private money is more expensive, but you pay for the certainty of execution and the time.
Yep.
And, time is in the eye of the beholder, right? For example, we work with many clients that, we feel are very bankable, and they have no problem getting financing from conventional banks. But ultimately, they make the decision that they'd rather go private because you could close, within 30 days.
Yeah, quickly.
You could start building faster. And, that cheesy line, time is money. Well, time is really money,
Right.
If you finish 4 months ahead of schedule and you start 5 months ahead of schedule, what is that, 6, 8, 9, 10 months worth of time worth to you?
Right. So these fast money, like private money, is really useful for a developer who wants to get things done very quickly.
Absolutely. Because if it doesn't happen quickly,
Right.
then it becomes very expensive.
100%. And I have a question about personal recourse. What's a common misconception about a personal guarantee on a commercial property, and why is this actually not as risky as it may seem?
So that's a great question, and we get that question all the time. People feel that if you give a personal guarantee on a commercial mortgage and something goes sideways,
Right.
2 weeks later they're knocking on your door asking you to move out of your house,
Yeah.
which is actually not the case. The legal hierarchy of, let's say, in case of a default of a personal guarantee is
Right.
you'll be on the hook for whatever's left
Yep.
after the bank disposes of the asset, and then whatever cash positions the real estate holding company might have. You're kind of third in line.
Right.
And I personally feel that non-recourse or with no personal guarantees is ideal, but on a commercial transaction, offering a personal guarantee, not the end of the world.
Right. So with a commercial property, it's more of you're absorbing the difference, not necessarily the whole.
The whole
Yeah,
liability.
they're not coming after everything.
Correct. It's not like in residential world
Right.
where it's your house and you
Exactly.
mess up and they'll take everything.
100%. And as far as for mortgage brokering, what are your most unconventional ways to generate leads?
Listen, I am a firm proponent that it's all about putting yourself out there.
Right.
Right. I have my personal approaches, and I think that's you got to kill everyone with service.
Right.
I am a very big proponent of helping people out, and it always comes back twofold.
100%.
I have many people that we speak to that we can't help.
Right.
Always take the minute, always give them the advice, always tell them how to do something, even if it's not a deal. You put yourself out there, it'll come back in multiples.
100%. So you think it's important to, as an originator, be able to present yourself as the type of person who can be trusted and who can always give their time in exchange for nothing, even just give their time.
Absolutely. So you must, when you deal with numbers and you basically deal with other people's debt, you have to be beyond trustworthy.
Right.
And my personal philosophy is you should absolutely go out your way, even if you don't make anything off it. You help a person out, you give them some advice.
Great.
The world will make it come back to you.
100%. And how do you cultivate this culture within Equitus with everybody that works for you?
So I tell everyone, all our employees, all our brokers, all our analysts, this is kind of ingrained into their training from day one.
Right.
And that's solely based on you provide a service.
Right.
We provide a service to all our clients 24/7 whenever they need. And you will we speak to prospects, and our job is to do what's in the best interest of the client,
Right.
and not us.
100%. And what idea do you believe, whether grounded in data or intuition, that many people you respect disagree with you on?
I personally think that there is going to be a correction in the current market sooner than a lot of people think.
Right.
Some of my mentors, some of our banking friends that I call them at this stage, I think it's going to be a much longer cycle. I have my own personal opinions why
Right.
the cycle should be shorter, but it's in the market, you never know.
Right. So you would say that's more based on intuition?
I'd say it's based on intuition.
Great.
Absolutely.
100%. And what's So back to Equitus, what's the gap in the market that you kind of decided to, what is something that you saw in the market that you needed to fill with Equitus?
So, I saw a real need in that, lower to middle market space
Okay.
where, we feel that, a lot of our competitors and a lot of the bigger firms and, the bigger banks, everyone wants to do the $200 million deal.
Right.
Well, and that's all in their prerogative. I feel that there's an amazing segment of the market in that, 1 to 80, 1 to $100 million space. And those are the borrowers that, more so less than often seem to be kind of overlooked and neglected,
Right.
that are, doing multiple transactions, doing beautiful projects. And, that's the market segment that we cater to.
Got it. 100%. And describe your thought process with opening Equitus. How long did you plan it out before taking the leap into the unknown?
Oof, that's a great question. Listen, I've been doing this for 18 years.
Right.
The thought has crossed my mind many times. I guess it came to a certain point where, I was confident in myself.
Right.
I was confident in the market, and I was confident in, the biggest blessing that I have which is all our clients.
Right.
And when I was comfortable in those three positions, it's, you pull the parachute and you jump off the plane.
100%. And did you from the start know that you were eventually going to open your own firm?
I hope to open my own firm.
And did you intentionally decide to build a client base so that in the future, when you do open your own firm, you're kind of going to be set up correctly?
So that is kind of a two-pronged question. I would say I've always, because of the business model that I kind of implemented within myself,
Right.
I have always built, a portfolio of clients.
Great.
And that portfolio just kept evolving and growing and evolving and growing over the years. And that's how I always run my business from day one. And Equitus was kind of the icing on the cake.
Got it. 100%. And how do you recognize an opportunity you want to go big on? Is it based on data or is it based on intuition?
So I'm in finance, so I have to do numbers, right? A lot of it is numbers. I would say kind of 70-30 numbers to intuition.
Got it.
Sometimes you gotta have the gut feeling with it also, right?
Of course.
Numbers, there's always numbers. It looks one way on a page, but then when it comes to real life, it's always different.
Right.
So intuition is extremely vital in it. You got to believe it in your gut. No matter how good the numbers look, numbers could change.
Right.
So you got to go with your gut and make a decision and live with it.
So do you think as a real estate entrepreneur in this day and age, you have to always have that prevailing belief in yourself that no matter what, you're going to adapt and change to any situation?
1,000,000%. You must have that in you, but you also must be prepared to change with your surroundings.
Right.
Because in our world, the ground shifts underneath you 24/7.
So quickly, yeah.
And you got to be prepared to adopt and inept, and you got to make sure that, your gut could hold it together.
Right. And do you think this trait is innate, or is this a learned trait that people have to be able to adapt to situations very quickly?
Oh, that's a nature versus nurture kind of deal. I would say that, that's a hard question. I don't know.
Is it innate for you?
It's innate by believing in yourself, but you had to learn to understand the numbers also.
Right. Of course.
I think you need a pretty healthy combination of both.
Okay, great. And what have you learned about yourself since you've closed your first deal?
Tolerance for pain really grows. Tolerance for difficulty, and like we just said, adapting to your environment.
Right.
In what I do, what my firm does, it's a constantly ever-changing environment. And things, the earth is shifting all the time.
Right.
So learning to adapt to the ever-changing environment,
Right.
that's just, that you really have to learn and be very much innate with.
100%. And do you think it's important to build that kind of skill of being numb with rejection?
Absolutely. Listen, there's rejection in this business. Anyone who tells you otherwise is not telling the truth.
Right.
There's absolutely rejection. There's rejection on, the client end, the lender end, it's all about how you react to that rejection.
Right.
Some people throw their hands up and give up. This is not the business for you.
Right.
But if you could kind of roll with the punches and learn how to react to those rejections
Right.
and how to overcome those rejections,
Right.
I think that's what makes you a superstar.
100%. And as far as leadership, how is this something that you were good at since you were born, or did you develop this as you went through your career? And what does it take to be a good leader?
I did not have it. I learned it. I learned it over many years, and I'm still learning it. And my personal philosophy of leadership is you don't rule from an ivory tower.
Right.
Any good leader is there in the trenches.
Yep.
24/7.
Captain go down with the ship.
With their team.
Right.
And that's the way that I run my company. Right. And that's the way I work with all of my employees. You got to be in there with the trenches with them.
Great. And would you say you cultivate this like culture of independent thinkers within your company where everyone's not necessarily an employee, but everyone kind of grows within their position?
I am absolutely a huge proponent of that. Independent thinking is a virtue that is hard to find.
Right.
And when you do find it, it's a very big thing to cherish. I'm absolutely all for cultivating, independent thinking and having people grow in their role and have their roles evolve and, grow. And, there's no glass ceilings.
Right.
Especially
100%.
in this industry.
Of course. And how do you go about setting goals for yourself and for Equitus?
So many different kinds of goals, personal goals, professional goals, career goals, corporate goals,
right.
goals for, my employees, our team members. It's all about, and the way that I set goals, and I set goals for Equitus, and the way I teach, my guys to set goals is, it's not all about the good. It's all about the bad, right? What were your obstacles? Where did you get hurt? What were some of your losses? How do you overcome those? And how do you, I guess, insulate yourself or prepare yourself for those types of items not to become issues again?
Okay.
I think once you can incorporate that as your goal, the good is easy, right?
Right.
The good stuff is easy.
Yeah.
It's easy for everyone, right?
Yeah.
But it's about learning how to position to minimize the bad.
Right.
And I think that's what we really focus on, when we do goal planning is to, how do we minimize the bad?
So after somebody makes a mistake, you kind of do a post-game analysis to understand exactly what went wrong and make sure that mistake does not happen again.
Absolutely. Right. And make sure we have the systems and processes in place to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Great, 100%. And what do you look for in a new hire?
What do I look for in a new hire? Someone who's an independent thinker. Someone who has very good analytical skills. Someone who could think outside the box. Someone that is devoted and hungry and, wants to give it their all. Because one of the things I learned at a very early age in this business is, it's 24/7 all the time. And you get out of it what you put in.
Right.
And the people that I've seen through my career that are, the most successful are the ones that have just been, you're in the game 24/7, you're on the clock and you got to make it happen.
Right. And what's your favorite question to ask to kind of gauge this personality type? Like what, do you have a question, like a go-to question that you ask in a hire?
Yeah. And that question is, if the tables are reversed, what would you ask of me?
Interesting. That's very interesting. Okay. And what value can a young professional provide for you to make you more inclined to either help them or hire them, whatever it is?
I'm a very big proponent. You gotta like who you work with. We look for like-minded people with, dedication, devotion, and work ethic.
Right.
Who have, quick aptitude to understand.
Right. 100%.
I think that's what makes it makes them the best.
And do you think a broker should start out analyzing deals and then moving into origination, or should they start directly in origination?
I think you absolutely have to work on deals first in a more analytical kind of stage.
Of course.
You need to understand numbers. You need to understand where those numbers are coming from.
Right.
You need to understand how to evaluate those numbers and how those numbers change. And I think that if you understand the numbers back end of it, it will make you so much better on the front end.
100%. And is it true that in this business as a commercial mortgage broker, you can do everything right and still lose? And how can a new broker navigate this reality by zooming out and kind of looking at the big picture?
So, with respect to, I'm going to answer the second part of that question first.
Okay.
So, a new broker could really kind of zoom out and look at it from a whole level, not on a deal by deal basis.
Right.
Because deals could die.
Yep.
And deals die. You could have a perfect transaction. You could have, the best terms. Your client loves you and everything's moving perfectly. And then the seller bails out.
Right.
Properties could have environmental issues. Sellers could have liens they can't remove off title.
Yep.
Where you ran a perfect deal, perfect transaction, you executed time-wise, rate-wise, you delivered everything that the client wanted and then some.
Yep.
And then you basically stop at the 1 yard line and you deal with the consequences of something that you cannot control.
Right. So even if you do the best that you can, you still can't really expect 100% of the time that everything's going to go through.
Correct.
Great. And what is the learning curve in commercial brokerage? How long does it take for a broker to really get it and be able to originate and close their own deals?
I think with kind of aggressive teaching, I think 6 months.
And what if is it possible, do you think, even for a new broker to learn everything by themselves without having a mentor that guides them through the process?
I think it's possible, but I think it is just...
Not ideal?
I think it's so much extra heavy lifting.
Right.
Why reinvent the wheel?
Right.
Right? It works.
Yeah, definitely.
So
it's better to have somebody kind of walk you through.
Absolutely.
And tell you what...
And avoid the landmines. Listen, once if you have a mentor or you have someone senior like I did when I was starting in this business,
right.
They kind of would tell you where to avoid the landmines. People
100%.
already been there. They stepped on those. Don't do it again. Don't step there. So.
And who was your mentor?
So when I started in this industry, it was actually one of the SVPs of JP Morgan Chase. Still a very dear friend. He's already retired. Right. His name is Milton Siplett.
Okay.
He was, 40 years in the industry before I even started.
Right.
And, he taught me the ropes. He taught me how to do it, and kind of very much was vital to becoming where I am today.
Great. And do you think you have this aura of paying that forward to the next generation?
1,000%.
Great. Amazing. And how can someone that you hire go about finding their niche within commercial real estate finance?
So I think it really depends on what they like to do, right? Some people like construction. I like construction, right? Some people are very analytical. Some people like healthcare, so they'll go into healthcare lending. Some people like to work on specialty assets like, gas stations and, mechanical and so forth. Some people like, the quick rush of doing a bridge loan, right?
Yeah.
I think it really boils down to what the individual's preferences are, what they like to do, and then you could tie it in with, the analytical components to go with it.
Got it. And is it sometimes accidental when somebody stumbles into a niche because they, for example, work on a deal that's completely different and they get that specific knowledge to be able to build off on that and close more deals like that?
Absolutely. Listen, we have guys that, I work with that started doing a very specific product,
right?
And, tried something else and loved that even more. And now that's all they do.
Great. And do you think that people that don't really know what they will like, let's say somebody's watching this in high school right now, and they're not sure necessarily what they don't even know. So how would they go about learning the different parts of the business in order to narrow down on what they want to do?
So I think the very basic conceptual core of the business is the same, irrelevant of the type of deal.
Yeah.
But try every one. Some are more, analytically intensive. Some are more, site intensive. Some are more paper intensive.
Great.
Just, I would say, try it all and see what makes you feel the best.
Sounds good. Amazing. And what does it take to be a $1 billion closer?
What does it take? It takes unlimited devotion and dedication to hard work.
Okay.
I think those are the things that are, major drivers. And, we're like the Marines, but a little different. It's not a job, it's an adventure.
Yeah, definitely. Do you think that people that kind of make it to that level are just committed to the craft, even outside of the working hours of 9 to 5, whatever it is? They just completely devote their life to it.
So there is no 9 to 5.
Right. 24/7.
It's 24/7. And the people that do it 9 to 5 are, I would say, are the lower end of the spectrum.
Right.
And then there's the people that do it 24/7. And those are the people that are,
So it's really
devote themselves completely to this craft.
Got it.
And they are, superstars.
So it's really that attitude of being the first one in and the last one out that sets you apart.
That on steroids.
Okay. Great. And how much of this side of the business comes down to understanding people, and how much of it comes down to understanding the asset? Would you say that it's an even mix between these two?
I think it's absolutely an even mix because, as I see it, what my job is to align the people end of it with the asset side of it, right? What is an individual's person's, business plan for this particular asset? Excuse me. What is it? What do they want to do with it? How do they want to do it? How long it's going to take them to do it? Really understand what the deal is on its merits and what is the ultimate end goal of the borrower, and then aligning the right loan product to basically give them the best certainty of execution.
Got it. And the prevailing skill across all of these skill sets is being personable and being able to serve people.
You got to be personable. You got to be able to serve people. But I tell my guys, it's also about listening. You got to shut up and listen.
Right.
See what your client is telling you. What do they want to accomplish? How do they want to accomplish it?
Right.
Why do they want to accomplish it? If you understand their why, it will help you make your job a lot easier.
Great. And are there people that you looked up to when you were coming up in the industry that you kind of taught you these specific concepts?
Sure. A lot of my mentors, a lot of people that I worked with over the years, a lot of the managers and, that I've had through my career that I'm extremely grateful for that, taught me, the way to think, the way to approach things, the way to look at things.
Right.
Absolutely. I am a very big proponent of learning, and, I feel that everything in life could be a learning opportunity if you really look at it correctly. And, I think all of them have been a vital part of me looking at things the way that I do.
Great. Amazing. And as far as what it takes to make a broker succeed, how has that changed over the past, 18 years?
So what's evolving more and more, it's not about the bottom line rate, right? It's not the number on the page. As things evolve and, banks are becoming a certain way, borrowers are becoming another way.
Right.
It's really important to understand what the overall situation is. Yeah. It's not about the number. It's not sometimes about always interest rate, right? With non-recourse, is it better to have non-recourse or is it better to have a quarter higher rate, right? There's all these philosophical conversations and philosophical dilemmas. Right. But ultimately it boils down to, what's in the ultimate need of the client, and what's evolved is the strategy and the way that clients execute and the type of service you need to provide them.
100%. And how does creativity play a role in real estate brokerage? Can you think back to a time where you chose to think differently and came up with an out-of-the-box solution to a problem that your client had?
So I think 80% of what I do requires a lot of creativity. Right. Because when you're trying to make, a bank product, which, banks are historically, they have their boxes and you got to kind of fit into them. When you're dealing with lenders and you're dealing with clients that, need certain types of execution,
Right.
creativity is the game, right?
Yep.
If there's no creativity, the deal doesn't happen. And, I actually pride ourselves that I think we're pretty creative in deal structure, because that's ultimately gets the job done. I could think of a deal we did, that was all based on creativity, where we financed a developer
Okay.
that was doing two simultaneous projects, and he went, into a joint venture with a nonprofit, and the bank had certain requirements, and the nonprofit had certain requirements, and there was a very big bridge in between. So we put the thinking cap on and we figured out a solution how to appease both sides simultaneously.
Right.
Made everyone happy. The deal's closed, and I think that was 150% of the deal was creativity.
Great.
Everything else was semantics.
And would you say that when you come up with these out of the box solutions, you kind of enact them as processes for future deals?
I think it's a footprint or a baseline for future deals. But we don't know what the future holds, right?
Right, of course.
We don't know how complicated the next one is.
Yeah, that's true. And in what situations in business do you listen to your gut intuition way more than you would use logic and reasoning?
Oof. I try to use a lot of logic and reasoning, but I think that'll only take you so far.
Right.
I think what kind of gets you over the edge is your gut.
Right.
And, logic and reasoning could only take you so far, but it's all about that, inside drive
Right.
that will tell you whether to pull the lever or not.
Of course, 100%. And who do you learn from at this point in your career?
I learn from everyone. I think in this industry, it's all about learning.
Right.
I learn from, the banks that we work with. I learn from clients. I learn from my employees. I learn from everyone. I'm a huge proponent of learning. I think that's what, in an ever-evolving industry, that's what it entails. And this is the industry that we're in. It is ever-evolving continuously. So always learn, always learn, And the funny thing is you will learn a lot from the most unexpected places.
Right. Yeah.
I think learning is like, industry 101.
Right. So you think keeping your ears open, your mouth closed is really the way to fast track yourself to learning as much as you can.
Absolutely.
Great. And what drives you nowadays? Is it money, personal achievement, family, philanthropy? And when would you say you've succeeded?
What drives me? As funny as it is to say, I really feel that what we do, I think it helps people.
Right.
And, I personally really love it when we help people succeed.
Right.
When we help people win.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the best, reward. The money is important. Yes, that will follow suit, right? My personal life philosophy is, when you devote everything to doing what you love and you gauge your own success in certain ways, and just my personality, I like helping people.
Right.
So if I could help, a small business buy their first building, you should see the smiles that goes on those faces, right?
Yeah.
Or when you change the landscape of a city block, right? That's when it kind of means long term something, right? Yeah. Your passion is aligning with embetterment of life or society for your clients, for your for your community, for whatever.
Right.
I think that's one of the major drivers for me.
So do you think your passion really is to just give, and this business kind of aligns with that passion?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Great. Amazing. And I have my final question to wrap
Please.
it up. What advice would you give your 22-year-old self about life, business, and relationships?
22-year-old self. Party less. Focus more. Don't make it all about the money. Focus more on relationships and cultivating those relationships. And give more earlier.
Great. Amazing. Alex, there's so much in this interview for young professionals, and I hope that people watching this will get some value from this and apply it to their career moving forward. Thanks again.
Thank
Really
you for
appreciate
having
it.
me.
Thank you. Great.